Hrs GMT on Monday the 13th of June 2022. 13th of June is dating back to 1963, 13th of June 1963, when the movement defending the community in the East End of London was founded. So there's quite a bit of decades, 6 decades, 7th decade. And the movement defending the community in the East End of London was founded at an address in New Road, London, E1, in the then local borough of Stepney. That was 1963, June 1963. So today is the 13th of June, 2022. And the 13th of June 1963 was the launching of the movement that has now spent 6 decades and into the 7th decade now, defending the community in the East End of London and defending the values of the universal values of the defense campaign from the East End of London, in the East End of London, and from the East End of London, defending the community. Now, 1963, 73, 10 years, 83, 20 years, 93, 30 years, 2003, 40 years, 2013, 50 years. And this is now just 1 year short of 60 years. But the decades are quite long and lengthy, and they've been hectic. So let's say the rounded figure 60 years, 7 decades and 60 years. They have been extensively dedicated to defending the community. And as we came along, as we went along, as we moved on, ideas had to be created, articulation given to the values, and the values had to be solidified. This has been a unique 60 years, let's say, 6 decades, 7 calendar decades, let's say. And the defense of the community has entailed defending everyone that can be identified as belonging to the community or being entitled to belong to the community. In the week in the UK, this is coming from London in the United Kingdom, in the week that is witnessing the news featuring the Boris Johnson-fronted cabal of a government in the UK being cynically obsessed with making a mark of showing to the world, to the public, that Boris Johnson-fronted cabal, is as hateful, as cruel, as callous as any that could be imagined. What almost 20 years ago, Theresa May, then a councillor in the London Borough of Sutton, Southwest London Borough of Sutton, I think she was a councillor in Sutton, and she was not a member of parliament at the time. Clearly, She was mounting her, if you like, claim to become a member of parliament and a politically significant member of parliament. She went on to become the prime minister. But nearly 20 years ago, she admitted, she staged a very significantly strategic kind of event, making a statement. Theresa May did. And she said that the Conservative Party had become discredited and had become known as the Nasty Party. Let's see the exact date when Theresa May actually made that statement, or the exact date that the accessible media gave the credit to her for making that statement. Let's see where it is. So the Nasty Party, if there is an entry for the Nasty Party in the usually consulted Wikipedia, but that's the Nasty Party. It says the term Nasty Party was first used by Theresa May, where in October 2002, I think I've got it right, calendar 20 calendar years ago, in October 2002, she described the Conservative Party of the United Kingdom as, there is a lot we need to do in this party of ours. Our base is too narrow, and so occasionally are our sympathies. You know what some people call us, the Nasty Party. That was the Tories are still the Nasty Party, which is a piece in the New Statesman retrieved on the 30th of December, I think, 2011, in the American way of counting. And so that is the one entry. Let's see if there is any other entry. The Guardian online has got this piece, and it says Tuesday, the 8th of October 2002, and it is timed as 2:09 British Standard Time, and it says the Nasty Party warning to Tories. Conservatives still seem seen as too narrow-based, conference told. And it says the Conservative leadership yesterday launched itself into a frenzy of self-reproach as it struggled to shed the image of Britain's Nasty Party, which has sunk into corruption, incestuous feuding, and the electorally disastrous exclusion of women and minorities. Let's read that paragraph once again. That's on the Guardian's website, dated the 8th of October 2002, that is 20 calendar years clearly. The Conservative leadership yesterday launched itself into a frenzy of self-reproach as it struggled to shed the image of Britain's Nasty Party, which has sunk into corruption, incestuous feuding, and the electorally disastrous exclusion of women and minorities. As key activists gathered in Bournemouth for what Ian Duncan Smith regards as his make or break conference as leader, his newly appointed chairwoman, Theresa May, set the tone with a remarkable denunciation of the party's past sins, still unrepented, just plain unattractive. Yes, we have made progress, but let's not kid ourselves. There is a way to go before we can return to government. There is a lot we need to do in the party of ours. Our base is too narrow, and so occasionally are our sympathies. You know what some people call us, the nasty party. Mrs. May told a stunned conference. As a shadow cabinet colleague, Oliver Letwin denounced the party's weird reliance on white male MPs, another measure of the desperation which grips the Tories 16 months after their second crushing election defeat came from a former party research chief. Andrew Lansley, the MP for South Cambridgeshire, was one of the Portilista modernizers who refused to serve in the Duncan Smith team. He used an article in today's Guardian to urge the leadership to consider changing the party's name to Reform Conservatives, an implicit tribute to Tony Blair's New Labour. Though the Tories also unveiled policy initiatives, notably a pledge to reimburse older people who pay for operations rather than wait in NHS queues. Their search for a political makeover focused on the politics of gender, race, and sexuality, as well as what Mrs. May admitted had been their demonizing of minorities. In one extraordinary passage, Mrs. May excoriated, without naming them, the Archers, Majors, and Edwina Currys, whose escapades have mired the party yet again as it struggles to recover. In recent years, a number of politicians have behaved disgracefully and then compounded their offenses by trying to evade responsibility. We all know who they are. Let's face it, some of them have stood on this platform, she said, accusing some colleagues, also unnamed, of trying to make political capital out of demonizing minorities. She charged others with indulging themselves in petty feuding or sniping instead of getting behind a leader who is doing an enormous amount to change a party which has suffered two landslide defeats. In another blunt reproach to entrenched attitudes, she admitted that constituency selection committees seem to prefer candidates they would be happy to have a drink with on a Sunday morning, the negation of the meritocracy the party claimed to espouse. At the last general election, 38 new Tory MPs were elected. Of that total, only one was a woman and none was from an ethnic minority. Is that fair? Is one half of the population entitled to only one place out of 38? She asked. On the conference fringe, the former Chancellor Kenneth Clarke clashed with rising star John Barker over gay marriage and repeal of Section 28. Though naturally on side for the modernizers' agenda, Mr. Clarke, still a leadership contender in waiting, said he would not vote for either as a symbol of reform. Harsher words were exchanged at an Equal Opportunities Commission fringe meeting where two senior Tory women clashed over affirmative action to ensure more women MPs from ethnic minorities, a policy widely endorsed by most speakers yesterday. Pamela Parker, who chairs the Tory Women's Organization, told delegates she opposes positive discrimination and suggested that the lack of women in public life is caused by a shortage of women putting themselves forward. Mr. Lansley, a former aide to Norman Tebbit, was booed by some male colleagues when he called for an A list of candidates for winnable seats, half of whom would be women or from the ethnic minorities. The MP warned them that if they get it wrong this time, the party will be saddled with unrepresentative MPs for a further 10 or 15 years. Well, the Conservatives since then, of course, have got more women and more ethnic minorities. But that is not necessarily representative of justice or fairness. And we are not going to go item by item in the course of this program, just referring to the nasty party and the original kind of publication of the comments by Theresa May. I can see that that particular intervention by Theresa May has had a singularly significant effect on the Conservative Party's composition. Whether others did the same as she did in terms of speaking out cannot be said without looking at all the archives. But my memory suggests that she actually did play the most significant single individual part in pointing out the nastiness and the legacy of the Conservative Party, nasty legacy. So, whatever her legacy as a short term, 2-year prime minister, she has actually made a contribution that has not been properly examined in that context, in the context of breaking the mold in terms of accepting and confessing and admitting the nastiness of the Conservative Party. Now, compared to what she said 20 years ago, what is the Conservative Party like now? Because in October 2002, the Conservatives, at the time that Theresa May made that intervention, the Conservative Party were out of power in the UK, and they were going to be out of power for another 8 years until 2010. Since returning to power in 2010, the Conservatives, now 12 years later, have become even nastier. Isn't it ironic? The Conservative Party is nastier in 2022 than it was at the time that the Theresa May remark was published in 2002. And most of the nastiness of the Conservative Party in 2022 can be attached to the leader, Boris Johnson, who is also the incumbent Prime Minister at number 10 Downing Street. He has glorified greed as good. He has glorified racism. He has demonized Muslim women as resembling bank robbers when they wear the burqa. And Boris Johnson, as the depraved symbol of cruelty and depravity in power, has condoned the depraved attack on the most innocent baby angel Geronimo lasting 4 years. And even the Guardian, despite the fact that the Guardian currently, contemporaneously, has got a kind of political sketch writer called John Crace, who is new in many ways because he writes about political personalities in a way that the Guardian has never published before, not in that way. For example, his John Crace's use of the phrase "the convict" to describe Boris Johnson is absolutely to the point. But the Guardian hasn't published anything like this in the past, and the Guardian currently doesn't even publish anything like this by any other writer. That is my view. Which means that the Guardian has not evaluated the nastiness, the elements, the evidence of the Conservative Party being nasty. Because if it had done, there would be absolutely no doubt, and I have no doubt whatsoever, that a large number of thinking people in this country would openly and more vocally demand the ouster of Boris Johnson and the Conservatives from power in a way that they are not doing, they have not been doing so far as I can see. So the nasty party has become nastier, and the leader of the nastier party, is even nastier than any the Conservatives had before, even nastier than Ian Duncan Smith, even nastier than the leader, not the prime minister, but the leader with a small L, Norman Tebbit. Now, talking about Andrew Lansley, who's been referred to as one of the speakers, one of the sources of dissent against the Ian Duncan Smith leadership and the conservative nastiness in 2002 context, my experience with Andrew Lansley when he became minister, he was Secretary of State at the expense of the NHS, at the expense of the health, is that Andrew Lansley was a liar, shameless liar, because for more than a year, I sent him evidential fact-based queries demanding access to legally, legitimately kind of available or legitimately sought information from the government archives, government files. And all I got every time was a very efficient operation Andrew Lansley ran, which is that he thanked an automated system of acknowledgement was operated from his email address, which contained profuse thanks to the person or personnel who had sent the email to his email address, and a promise that he would reply, get back very soon. He never did, let alone deliver the information that I was after. So the comparison between the person making a otherwise laudable, morally laudable, almost ethical speech about politics and the reality when they get in power is the most important test. And that test has not been actually applied even to Theresa May. Because Theresa May was found, because she when the Conservatives returned to power at the May 2010 election in the UK, Theresa May was appointed Home Secretary by Dave Cameron, who became Prime Minister. And it was Theresa May who was later discovered to have introduced the hostile environment policy in order to attack the minorities, the very minorities that she included in her speech in 2002 as being deserving, worthy of support and inclusion and promotion in the Conservative Party. So let's see what she said, or she was called, when her record as the Home Secretary was kind of published. So this is in 2012. It said then Home Secretary Theresa May announced a policy strategy aimed at combating illegal immigration by making life so unbearable for undocumented migrants that they would voluntarily choose to leave. In Theresa May's own words, the aim is to create here in Britain a really hostile environment for illegal immigrants. While the concept of hostile environment had first been introduced in 2007 by then New Labour Immigration Minister Liam Byrne, 2012 saw the first systematic implementation of this strategy. Now, a pause there. Now, Liam Byrne was the creep who hit the headlines in May 2010. Within hours of the Gordon Brown-fronted government, of which Liam Byrne was a Treasury minister, was forced to leave number 10 Downing Street because the Gordon Brown-fronted government lost to the Conservatives fronted by David Cameron. And Liam Byrne was all over the newspapers, mainly the popular newspapers, but the so-called serious organs of the media as well. Because he left a note at the Treasury, at the Finance Ministry, where he was a minister, junior minister, sick-makingly, sadistically celebrating the fact, aiming that celebration at the incoming Conservatives, saying that there is no money left. That is, there is no money left in the exchequer, the government treasury. So let's look at a bit more of that Liam Byrne. Liam Dominic Byrne, born the 2nd of October 1970, is a British politician serving as the Member of Parliament for Birmingham Hodge Hill since 2004. A member of the Labour Party, he served in Prime Minister Gordon Brown's cabinet from 2008 to 2010. Now let's see which part of this entry records his sick-making stupidity of departure from the Treasury. On leaving his position as Chief Secretary to the Treasury, following the change of British government in May 2010, Byrne left a note to his successor, David Laws, saying, "Dear Chief Secretary, I'm afraid there is no money. Kind regards and good luck, Liam." Now that's as sick-making a note as could be imaginable in that context. Byrne later claimed that it was just a typical humor between politicians, but regretted it since the new government used it to justify the wave of cuts that were introduced. The note echoed Chancellor Reginald Maudling's note to James Callaghan. "Good luck, old cock. Sorry to leave it in such a mess," after the Conservatives' defeat at the 1964 election. The note was frequently referenced by the following coalition government of Conservatives and Liberal Democrats to criticize the financial record of the previous Labour government and used as a visual prop by David Cameron in the question time debate preceding the 2015 general election. After the party's election defeat, Barnes stated he had been burnt with shame since 2010 over the note which had named harmed the 2015 election campaign. Burnt with shame, of course, which is what we use the language about Keir Starmer. And our campaign has called Keir Starmer the person who has politically murdered the Labour Party. And this is Monday, the 13th of June 2022. And I'm repeating this one. And with the background in the context of Liam Byrne celebrating, sick-making celebration of a note he left for David Laws. Now, David Laws, who was a member of the Lib Dems, who formed part of the coalition formed in May 2010. Not long after entering government, David Laws became embroiled in some sort of notoriety and corruption and had to resign his post. So what I'm saying is that in the UK, in government, in parliament, there is no standard. Contrary to what Imran Khan in Pakistan, sitting in Pakistan, told Pierce Moron not long ago, a few days ago. I referred to this in the previous main edition of this broadcast. That Imran Khan is absolutely wrong on that one. And I will not repeat the conversation that I had with, conversation was it? Or a commentary or confrontation, challenge. In the 1960s, I challenged one of the most high-profiled predecessors in post as Prime Minister of Pakistan as it is now. Prime Minister of Pakistan post 1971, that is to say, Pakistan after the creation, emergence of Bangladesh as an independent quote state. And I said the only thing I can refer to here is that I said in the broadcast yesterday that in 1971 or towards 1971, I didn't support any political party. Now, that may sound ironic because I have the maximum profile in political opinion. Probably that is the reason why I didn't support any of the political parties. I had a political position, which I still have, which is that none of the people in any of the political parties in what is now Bangladesh, what was then East Pakistan, none of them was suitable by character. None of them was equipped with character, integrity, honesty, sincerity, competence, knowledge, whatever, to hold any of the positions. And I had the misfortune, well, it's an ironic phrase, of having known so many of the post holders in so many regimes in Pakistan as it was, that I was convinced that none of the people that were posing as possible members of government, members of the regime, from either wing of the country, because in 1970, during the election, the run-up to the election of 1970, there was not one public mention. There was not one public mention that there would be a movement for freedom for a country called Bangladesh. There was no public mention. And it is absolutely important to point this out. If there was such a mention in public, then according to the international law and according to the national law, that would be treated as treason. And treason is an unforgivable crime, it's an unforgettable kind of offense. As every dictatorial, authoritarian regime in any country, desperate to silence its opposition, has shown, Bangladesh included. But the 50 years of Bangladesh since 1971, which is 51 years, the 51 years have seen too many Bangladesh political regime fronters and cabals wrongly resorting to the alleged offense of treason to penalize, to punish, to annihilate their opponents. That is why, if in 1970 anyone, whatever the particular political color or persuasion, whatever gender, whatever orientation, if anyone had said anything remotely suggesting a discernible kind of statement, make a discernible kind of statement that East Pakistan had become independent after the then scheduled 1970, December 1970 election, then that person would have been tried for treason. And that trial would be completely unimpeded by any international opinion or international forums. Because treason is one of those dictatorial machines, devices that the international kind of order has allowed each individual so-called sovereign state under the so-called sovereignty to crush any opposition with. Although the concept of Bangladesh itself was not treasonable, but in the constitutional frame, to say that there would be a Bangladesh would be considered treasonable. And the military regime that was still in power would have loved to find a single one that is saying, or that was saying in public, on the record, that East Pakistan of that time was about to become independent. So there was radio silence, absolute total silence in public. Anyone who says otherwise is of course not aware, not awake, and most certainly not telling the truth. There was no hint, absolutely no hint, that East Pakistan would become independent as Bangladesh. So the election of 1970, December, originally it was scheduled to be held in September, but because of the cyclone and the environmental kind of disaster that affected most of south of East Pakistan, it was delayed by 3 months, and the election was held eventually in December 1970. And the run-up to the election was, if you like, approached in a typical democratic way, typical of the subcontinent. Loud noise, huge promises, pack of lies. So this is the reason why I could not support a single party, and I could not commend a single politician. And I still can't. Not because I don't want to, but the evidence shows that I cannot find anyone that is fit for purpose. Now, this is the context, and this is the additional discussion I'm having about Imran Khan on top of what I said in the last broadcast from this channel, KhoodeelaarTV television channel, coming to you from the east end of London. And our main base politically, the campaign defending the community, the main base politically has been the London Borough of Tower Hamlets. So when I oppose and call it the corrupt mayor post or the corrupting mayor post in Tower Hamlets, I do that for the simple reason that there is not a single one that can seek the post among the available people that are visible, who has the character, who has the integrity, who has the knowledge, who has the commitment to serve the people with honesty, integrity, and dedication without fear or favor, with equal fairness and with open door to the services of the council, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their gender, regardless of the other orientations, etc. So I become probably the only political activist and thinker contemporary world who has high political opinion but is not convinced there exists any political party or platform that I can commend or follow. Now, in the case of the UK, I joined the Labour Party completely for a different purpose. And the purpose has been to collect evidence as to how corrupt the Labour Party is. I have not been disappointed at all. I have found ample evidence of the corruption A to Z right across the Labour Party. Festering is the word. The Labour Party in Tower Hamlets has been festering in corruption, and the Labour Party across the country and across Greater London, where Tower Hamlets is, has been festering in corruption. This is the truth. So when in 2009 to 2010, attempts began to be made in Tower Hamlets to inflict the corrupt elected mayor post on Tower Hamlets people. And by the time I found out, they had already collected quite a few hundred signatures in support of the so-called referendum that they wanted as a formality. And by the time I found out, I investigated the actual presence among the people in the borough of any significant numbers of opinions, of arguers, opponents to what was going to be absolutely corrupt post and corrupt phenomenon, corrupt event. There was a gathering held at the what is called the Micro Business Center, situated in the Greater Haque Street, which is off the Hanbury Street on the other one side and the Whitechapel Road on the other side. And the Hanbury Street is itself off Brick Lane. So it's in the Brick Lane area. So I attended a meeting, the beginning of 2010. And the meeting, as has been usual, was populated by the usual suspects in the Labour Party. By usual suspects, I of course refer to either has-beens or wannabes in the Labour Party to become councillors or a face. And they, of course, spilled ignorance. They didn't spill anything but ignorance. And while they were spilling, they could only do ignorance. They didn't know what constitutionality was, what democracy was, what accountability was, what answerability was, and what was the best thing that the community in Tower Hamlets deserved from the so-called elected council. And one of the speakers at the event was Alauddin, who was a former councillor, Labour Party councillor. Any video of the event will show that he drank a lot of water. Alauddin drank an awful amount of water. I have not found out why he was so thirsty on that occasion. Somebody else said that he had an attack of nerves because, for whatever reason, I don't know. But Alauddin was one of the frequent kind of speakers at that gathering. The others who spoke didn't drink as much water, but they didn't deliver anything either. Now, that was January 2010, and this is June 2022, that is 12 years, 5 months later, 12 and a half years later. And what happened on the 5th of May to this year? I'll say that again. On the 5th of May 2022, there was this election, council election, along with the election to the post of the corrupting post of mayor. Both sets of elections, if you like, in Tower Hamlets, mayor election and the election to the Tower Hamlets Council, numerically have been declared to have been won by Aspire, an outfit that is associated with Luthuraman. Now, before going into that, let me talk about Aspire the ward. One of the many dozens of political, ethical email addresses that I have operated and created over the years was called Aspire Educate. And Aspire Educate, as the email address, was created by me in July 2015. And Aspire Educate was the particular email address that was created to advocate for the rights of a woman stranded in Bangladesh and let down by the London Borough of Tower Hamlets crooks and criminals. So Aspire Educate, that particular email address would have gone to Luthuraman and to others during July 2015 and onwards. Whether Luthuraman was in power in July 2015 doesn't matter, because many of the contracts that he has had were and still are from that batch in positions within the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. So aspire, educate, I'm saying the aspire word was used by me significantly used by me. There are literally hundreds of thousands of words that I wrote, I have written, and those words are there. So, to what extent that particular word was, quote, borrowed, I'm not saying stolen, borrowed by Lutfur Rahman is not demonstrable at this time because the origin and the actual naming of the party that he now calls Aspire, the details have not been disclosed or published. Let's see what archived emails I can find that were sent from or entailed that email address, Aspire Educate. Remember, this is a broadcast coming to you, wherever you are, from the London Borough of Tower Hamlets politically. And this is why we are focusing on the empirical evidence of behavior about and around involving the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. And coming here and aspire, educate, let's say, let's go back as far as possible on this archive reference. Okay, so if we date back to this is the 7th of August 2018. I'll come to that in a minute. One of the emails that I sent on the 13th of August, it's a Monday, 13th of August 2018, contained an image, still image of a notice in red color, lift out of order. And it says replacement parts are on order. Our apologies for this. And this was on the 14:47 hours, Tuesday, 14th of August, 2018. That was repeating, resending the email of Monday, the 13th of August, 2018. And this lift was out of order for 6 running days. So this was the date, or these were the dates that we can find, Aspire, Educate, the email address. Now, let's check what the official or the published entry, if there is an entry on Aspire, says its date of formation. It's called Aspire Party, yes? And it has got an entry, Wikipedia entry. Listen to this. Aspire is a political party in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, England. And it goes on, formed by Lutfur Rahman and councillors elected as members of his Tower Hamlets first. So they were elected not as members of the Aspire party, they were elected, had been elected as Tower Hamlets' first member. After Tower Hamlets first was removed from the register of political parties following voting fraud and malpractice, its councillors formed the Tower Hamlets Independent Group. After some defections, the remaining Tower Hamlets Independent Group councillors registered formally as a political party in 2018. Most of its elected members were former Labour Party members, with a few exceptions. It was the largest political opposition on Tower Hamlets Council before the 2018 May elections, and then gained majority control of the council in the 2022 election, winning 24 of the council's 45 seats. Rahman was re-elected mayor in those elections. Now, the Aspire party has got as its leader Lutfur Rahman, as its treasurer Jahed Chowdhury, as its nominating officer Lillian Collins. And it says that it was founded on the 26th of January 2018, and that it was preceded by Tower Hamlets first, and its headquarters is 28 Castlemaine Street, Whitechapel, London. And amazingly, it says its ideology, democratic socialism, and political position left wing. And let's see what the left wing reference is to. And it is taken from the magazine, the outlet in the USA, Jacobin, and it's retrieved on the 9th of May 2022. And it says, Lutfur Rahman, I'm a socialist, and I just beat the Labour Party. Sorry about this best confusion, because I was reading that from a distance. So read again. Lutfur Rahman, I'm a socialist, And I just beat the Labour Party in London's poorest borough. And the attribution is Jacobin, retrieved on the 9th of May 2022. And I'll come to all of that in a minute shortly. So, the Richard Morey ruling against Luther Oman, dated the 23rd of April 2015 is there included as well. That's where the mention of Andrew Ireland occurs. And the Jacobin magazine, not because I know anyone personally involved with it, but basing on the contents of the Jacobin magazine and looking at the similarity or similarities between its contents and the contents of some of the other so-called left-wing, so-called socialist outlets in the UK, it is quite clear that the Jacobin is a follower, ideologically a follower of the very people that oppose socialism. And that Jacobin itself does not practice socialism. And that Luther Oman was never a socialist. And the address 28 Castlemaine Street is the address of a person who is actually an active member of the kind of cultural groupings that are closer to the Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh than they are to any so-called left-wing party. Now, I have no objection to them being closer to the Jamaat-e-Islami or to not being closer to Jamaat-e-Islami, but that is an evidence, item of evidence. Now, anyone who knows of the Jamaat-e-Islami would know that the Jamaat-e-Islami is not a socialist party, nor would they say that anyone involved in any position as leader of the Jamaat-e-Islami could be called a socialist. In fact, according to most of the commentators claiming to be socialists and claiming to write about the events of August 1975 that included the massacre of the family of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, including the murder of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. They all still accuse the Jamaat-e-Islami of being a right-wing, almost fascistic, anti-socialist movement. And the program that Andrew Gilligan put together and fronted as it was aired under the banner of the Dispatches slot on the 1st of March 2010. That program was headlined or headed Britain's Islamic Republic. It wasn't called Britain's Socialist Republic. And it most certainly wasn't called Democratic Socialist Republic. That program, fronted by Andrew Gilligan, broadcast on the 1st of March 2010 by Channel 4 television station in this country, described the East London Mosque the London Muslim Center, along with the Islamic Forum Europe, all three somehow based at the same building complex in the Whitechapel Road. Andrew Gilligan portrayed them as, of course, being Islamic in the extremist sense of the term. And Andrew Gilligan's program included a number of people whom the British media have described as being extremist fundamentalist, very much similar to, if not necessarily identical, with Islamic State, which came to be in operation after, not long after that, not long after the 1st of March 2010. So the Jacobin magazine gives Luther Roman a credit for being a socialist. Now, I don't know who the Jacobin magazine has in place in Tower Hamlets, looking at the evidence of the community's composition or the evidence of the role played by any of the people associated with Luther Roman in the Aspire party. And I don't know how many of them, the Jacobin people that is, examined the contents of the Andrew Gilligan transcript. Because although the program video itself has become quite often unavailable, inaccessible, his transcripts have not been unavailable. And the Andrew Gilligan transcripts are, as I say, among the most kind of frequently accessible sources of commentary and information about what has taken place in the process of foisting the corrupt mayor post on Tower Hamlets, the people of Tower Hamlets on the London Borough of Tower Hamlets Council. I mean, today's news, mainstream news in the UK, it includes the offensive nugget that says that Brenda, the Queen Elizabeth, the monarch, has included Tony Blair as one of her most highly ranked champions, chivalrous kind of decorations and gong receivers to celebrate her jubilee 70 years in the throne. Why is that important? That is important because it was Tony Blair who killed off local democracy by introducing the corrupting post of mayor, elected mayor, executive mayor, starting from 2000. In the case of London, it was Ken Lying Still Livingston. In the case of East London boroughs, it was a fascistic, right-wing, anti-democratic person called Robin Wales. So Tony Blair did that. It's a kind of mixed kind of result of the lobbying that Ken Lying Still Livingston had conducted within the Labour Party clandestinely and openly for the best part of 15 years. After the Greater London Council was scrapped by the regime of Margaret Thatcher. And the reason why Ken Lying Still Livingston lobbied the Labour Party, within the Labour Party, for the best part of 15 years after that, was because he had tasted power. Ken Livingstone Livingstone had tasted power, political power, the kind of whatever it was that he tasted as the leader of the Greater London Council. He got intoxicated. Now, I was the one that actually played the world exclusive role over several years in opposing Ken Livingstone Livingstone at uncountable, I would say several hundred, the uncountable events that he staged mainly on the what they called the principal floor of the county hall, which is the ground floor of the county hall, as it then was, London Southeast 1. That was the headquarters of the Greater London Council, and it also housed the Education Committee of the Greater London Council, which was widely known as the Inner London Education Authority. And I found myself over the key parts of the years. Almost every day I would go to County Hall as part of my duty, my ethical duty, my moral duty, from Tower Hamlets in the East End by public transport, of course. And I would go there by checking the diary events. And my timing or the timing of my arrivals at County Hall would coincide almost always with the holding of the latest, then latest, that day's latest self propaganda publicity event by Ken Livingstone Livingstone, featuring himself at the center of the attention of the media. And Fleet Street, as well as the television channels that were in existence at the time, would go there and they cover his self presentation, narcissistic events. As a independent investigative photojournalist, I took a number of very exclusive photographs of Ken Livingstone Livingstone. To talk about those photographs and why they haven't been published yet in due course, because there is a lot to say about those photographs. So my immediate response to Ken Livingstone's lying, on an almost daily basis of his lying, was to confront him in a style that I had found myself having introduced when I confronted or challenged Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in the late 1960s in Dhaka, in East Pakistan, at the Institute of Engineers. And I politically and ethically and morally totally sabotaged Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and defeated him in a way that Zulfikar Ali Bhutto has not been defeated, never been defeated by any other person anywhere, either in East Pakistan or in West Pakistan, including not by Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. Ayub Khan gave him the sack from Ayub Khan's military regime, but he did not defeat Zulfikar Ali Bhutto politically, ethically, morally, precisely because Bhutto became then kind of reinvigorated in terms of his image. He gained political kind of celebrity, if you like, in Pakistan at that time, in the 1960s. because he could say that the military dictator Ayub Khan had kicked him out of his government. So when I came across Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, or he came across me at the Institute of Engineers, a most unplanned event happened of absolutely monumental consequences, I think, as events have shown. I defeated Bhutto, and so Bhutto was not able to contest, undermine Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. So I acted in effect, not with intention, but in effect I acted as Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's main advocate and spokesperson. None of that my intention, but that is how it turned out to be. Because Bhutto was there in Dhaka to usurp Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's popularity and to challenge him. And I put paid to all of that by sending Bhutto out of the Engineers Institute practically in tears. Now, a boy from Silot, which is where I am from, never would have done that with purpose. Because I was there to observe a political meeting by Bhutto. I was not there to defeat him. But my ethical training, moral training, compelled me to challenge him by asking him 9 questions, one after the other. And at the conclusion of my 9th question, Bhutto was unable to stay there physically. He was shaking. In rage, he was not afraid. He was absolutely outraged that a boy from East Pakistan had the audacity not only to challenge him, but to overwhelm him morally with a series of 9 questions. So this is a theme that I'll come back to from time to time contextually. So when I came to meet Ken Lyingstill Livingstone, probably about 10 years since I first encountered Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in the 1960s, I met Ken Lyingstill Livingstone in 1977. And it was a coincidence because for a campaigning purpose, I was billed as a speaker along with Ken Lyingstill Livingstone and somebody else at a political rally, not a mass rally, but a political rally, political event that was held at the Wandsworth Town Hall in Tooting in London in 1977. So when the meeting finished, and the people who participated left the Tooting Town Hall, I noticed that somebody was talking to me from one side, either behind me or in front of me or whatever. But it was clear that they were talking to me. So I turned to whoever there was, and it was this person who had sat near me on the platform, on the stage. And he said simply, a small number of words, he said, "I wish I could speak like you." I had no idea what he was referring to, but he obviously was referring to the way I spoke at the gathering and the way he noticed the way I spoke. Think about that. Livingstone didn't say that the substance of what I said was something that he would support, but the way I spoke. I mean, this is something that I've been kind of at the receiving end of from quite a strange variety of people sources. A man called Joseph Hunt. He was a leader of the what is called West Indian Standing Conference. And this Joseph Hunt was one of the people from the West Indian community, as it was called, in the late 1950s, early 1960s, in London's Notting Hill. Now, Notting Hill was the locale, the area where a lot of racist attacks were mounted against the newly arrived West Indian island people. And Joe Hunt was one of the activists in the 1960s. And Joe Hunt actually went on to write a pamphlet called Nigger Hunt because he was incensed by the police targeting West Indian young people and hunting them down. So when Joe Hunt was reduced in terms of his political appeal and impact, he was given a kind of token job by the establishment, by whom by the time he arrived, Joe Hunt arrived in Tower Hamlets, he was politically, I would say, a retired force, that is a spent force. And it became very clear, and I'll cover that from time to time in this particular broadcast. This is the KhoodeelaarTV television channel. The theme is Baby Angel Geronimo. Now, Baby Angel Geronimo is the little alpaca that has become absolute symbol of innocence, fairness, justice, universality, and he has become that because of his being targeted by the depraved regime currently fronted by Boris Johnson. But before that, it was the depraved regime of Theresa May. Remember the nasty party and the hostile environment. Nasty party she distanced herself from, and hostile environment she created to make the party nastier. So Joe Hunt, by the time he arrived in Tower Hamlets, where he was not associated with the local community, because the local demography in Tower Hamlets in the late 1960s, early 70s, when he came, was not mainly made up of people from the Caribbean or the African backgrounds. There were significant numbers of Somali people, but not from other parts of Africa, not most certainly from Caribbean. So Joe Hunt, the person who had written the Nigger Hunt, was given the post de facto bureaucrat for the what was then called the CCTH, Council of Citizens of Tower Hamlets. Now CCTH was the name of the organization that I am the honorary CEO of, and I have been for the last many years, since today's date. I think since June 2013. And there is an absolutely a world of difference between what Joe Hunt did, the CCTH, and what I'm doing. with the equivalent in terms of general purpose, but not the details. The organization that I am honorary chief executive of is called the Race Equality Internationalist, REET. And the one that Johan was the chief bureaucrat of, he was paid, I'm not paid, was called Council of Citizens of Tower Hamlets. Now, Johan's outfit received the patronage and endorsement of the established kind of outfits, both in Tower Hamlets in the form of the Bishop of Stepney, the Anglican Bishop of Stepney, and also centrally from the various personalities that form the part of the government and the establishment. So when he first met me and he formed an idea about me and he witnessed me at various meetings, Johan said, and it's not something that he would have said if he didn't believe it, because I didn't ask him to say it and I had no need for it, asking him to say it. So Johan said, "You are an orator." Now, of course, orator is not a unique position, but for somebody like Johan to volunteer that time and again about my public speaking was significant, and I may make no more of this particular reference than that. Going back to Ken Lying Still Livingstone, who I did not call Lying Still in 1977. I began to call Ken Lying Still Livingstone Lying Still after a long interregnum, when I had seen enough of his lying. So I began to call him Ken Lying Still Livingstone only after 2006 or thereabouts, or maybe 2004 and thereabouts. Because Ken Lying Still Livingstone became involved in lying for big business. And he did that in order to promote the big business agenda and the agenda of the City of London to crush the area known as Brick Lane, to physically crush and destroy the area known as Brick Lane, which is where the name Khoodeelaar comes from, and I'll come to that in a second. Now, Ken Lying Still Livingstone had said he wished he could speak like me, and 5 years later, I think, a man called Jeremy Corbyn met me in an almost identical situation in the Alta Valley Park. I think it was 1982. Don't think it was 1981. And there was an event, there was a public event against racism. And among the speakers on the microphone, holding the microphone, not the loud hailer, but there was a long wire at the end of which was a microphone. And I had spoken for maybe 3-4 minutes, not longer than that, I don't think. And the turn came for a man called Jeremy Corbyn to speak after me. As he was picking up the microphone from me in the Alta Valley Park, Jeremy Corbyn said, "I wish I could speak like you." I'm absolutely certain he said the same very form of words. If he didn't, then he said slightly different, but effectively, I am correctly paraphrasing what he said. Now, I made nothing of it. But I noted that and I thought, oh my God, why are these people saying that they wish they could speak like me? What is it that they locate in my speaking or speeches or speech making? What are they kind of craving? And what they were craving, and what I think they're still craving, is the effectiveness of the speech, so that it would elevate them to some level that they had not been able to reach. That is their motivation for saying they wish they could speak like me. But of course, that was the other thing. The other thing was to ingratiate themselves to me or with me. Now, with Ken Langston Livingstone in 1977, there was nobody in Tower Hamlets, because that was, remember, 1977 was a year before the racists murdered Altavali. So in Tower Hamlets, there was no known, discernible, community-based political awareness against racism. So therefore, there was nobody. And anyway, because of the age, there was nobody there that Ken Langston Livingstone could recruit as his kind of fan base, which he later was able to do. So Ken Langston Livingstone was the first personification of the corrupt mayor post that was inflicted on the people of London by Tony Blair. And with the passage of years, 5, 6, 7 years after Newham got in kind of lumbered with the corrupting post, in the person of Robin Wales, elements in Tower Hamlets cooked up this plot. Now, to what extent they got any encouragement or any advice from George Galloway is not clear. But George Galloway definitely was involved in supporting the call for a mayor, elected mayor. And we shall update on George Galloway's role in Tower Hamlets in due course. But before we do that, let me say this. In the last 48 hours, let's say, I contacted one of the Bangladeshi members of the Tower Hamlets Labour Party, and I asked them to take part in this program, not this particular edition, but in the edition that was due to go out shortly afterwards that night, about 2 nights ago, I think. And the reason I did that, the reason I wanted to get this person, member of the Labour Party, to come on this program and to speak, was to understand how they were thinking, what they were thinking about the disaster of the Tower Hamlets Labour Party, sinking even deeper than it had been. And this was in the context of the Jacobin, another hocus pocus left-wing sort of outlet celebrating the bogus left-wing claim by Luthuraman. For some reason, this individual found himself unable to answer my calls because I wanted to send him a link to appear. And I needed him to send me their email address, which they didn't. Because it is more reliable to use the email system to communicate a number than to use a text message on the mobile phone, which more often than not, it makes mistakes in keying in numbers or letters. So I wanted to avoid that. But this individual, for their own reason, decided not to take part. Because if they did take part, that would actually open them to questioning by their contacts in the Labour Party. And that is something that they didn't want to face. That is my belief, my conclusion. And the same thing applies to another one of the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets that I contacted a few minutes before this one. And that one said that there was a thing ongoing scheduled on the 18th, I think, of this month, that he would be busy until the 18th. And this one also said similar things. And what that is the reselection of the two sitting members of parliament, I think, in Tower Hamlets. The two sitting members of parliament in Tower Hamlets are women, and they're both from Bangladeshi backgrounds. Now, if those two individuals were busy with that kind of triggered reselection, then they were doing what would be ordinarily expected of them as Labour Party members to be doing. But I think that is where the sickness of the Labour Party is, because that's what they've been doing. Most of the Labour Party members believe that being a member of the Labour Party, the best part, the highest form of political activities that the Labour Party member can engage in is to do the canvassing and do the kind of propaganda and promotion for the particular candidate or candidates that they support. That is wrong. Because these same individuals or similar ones, similar to them, comparable ones, comparable to them, don't do that even when there is no triggered reselection process or contest ongoing. In other words, they don't say that this is not the time that we are busy canvassing or whatever. We can engage in some reviews, some thinking, some analysis, and some soul searching, some reflecting. They don't do that. And all the time that I've been a member of the Labour Party, I am currently not active member of the Labour Party. But I have been a Labour Party member for long enough. And I found the Labour Party membership events organized for the Labour Party members, like the General Committee, where I have been member of, and branch committee, etc., etc. The Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, in my experience, has been a corrupt, absolutely thoroughly corrupt, backward, disgustingly backward and ignorant and stupid outfit. Now, if that is the party that actually has been in power for the 6 calendar years or 7 calendar years since Election Commissioner Richard Morey ousted Luthuraman on the 23rd of April 2015, then, as the saying goes, God help us. God help the people of Tower Hamlets, the ordinary people of Tower Hamlets. Now, today's Daily Mirror has, of course, this front page that 1 million children will be denied this school meals. Let's see where we can find this one. And then I shall read the main kind of probably in the next few minutes I'll have to end this program because somebody would be wanting to meet me for something completely different. I think somebody would be. If you come back 10 minutes, please. Can you come back in 10 minutes? Now, this is the front page of the Daily Mirror today. 1 million kids to go hungry. And the headline on top of that is Free School Meals Scandal. Now, Johnson rejects plea to extend scheme to all children living in poverty. Now, there is no need for reading the whole piece. Essentially, this is the extent to which the Boris Johnson fronted regime is actually prepared to starve the children. But before that, it is the cause of starving the children. And it's a cycle. And in the last year or so, the young footballer called Marcus Rashford has dominated the tabloid headlines as being the campaigner for children to be given school meals, free school meals. Children in poverty, that is. It's not the Labour Party. So what I'm saying is the Tower Hamlets as a borough, which is one of the most notoriously poverty-stricken boroughs in all of England, has got highly deprived numbers of people. The last thing it needs is a corrupt regime at the council. And we shall be updating on the corruption of the Tower Hamlets Council, corruption of the corrupt post of elected mayor in due course. For time being now, it is 5 minutes after local time, 8:05, that is 5 minutes after 8 p.m. And it's 6 minutes now after 7 p.m. GMT, that is 19:07 GMT, or 19:06 GMT anyway. 19:06 still, it's not 7 minutes yet. So we shall be continuing all these topics. So if you are watching this anywhere in the world, think about this. If you come across a similar program anywhere, on any channel, any platform, let us know. But we say that there is no such program being run by any other campaign or organization or network. And we are doing this as a service to the people of the world, promoting the cause of justice, morality, ethics, universality, accountability. Until the next time, goodbye.